Yeah, I think the issue is that when we talk about like differences in testosterone and ability to defend people from like violence, these are like the least important things that exist in society today. Probably things like IQ or your ability to do well in school or work certain types of jobs are becoming increasingly more important. And these are arenas where women are at parity or slightly better or slightly worse, depending we're talking about, with men in a lot of different circumstances. So the idea of building all of our society and our hierarchies around who can kill who with their bare fists probably isn't very relevant or effective in organizing society today.
Yeah, but you, Destiny, you would agree that we have to have an enforcement arm which enforces the laws of the nation, and that men are going to be the default for that enforcement arm, basically at all times.
Well, it depends. No, that's not even remotely true. No,
it is true.
It's not.
Okay, but demonstrate how it's not.
Can a judge be a woman?
Yeah, judges aren't the enforcement arm. The enforcement arm are the people who are going to be out there enforcing the law.
Okay, so judges are absolutely part of our enforcement. It's part of our criminal justice system. But you're saying that just the cops themselves might have to be men?
Well, let's back up. Let's back up.
Okay.
What does a judge enforce? So a judge will lay down, their judgment, but they're not enforcing the judgment themselves. Other people are doing that enforcement for them, right?
Okay, so if you're saying that at the end of the day, the people that apply physical violence might have to be men, if at the very end of that chain, then we can say that, but I still wouldn't organize an entire society around that.
Yeah, but it's going to be a necessity that society is organized around that. Because
why would it be? Why would we organize all of our society around one of the least important parts of our society?
That is about the most important part is the enforcement and defense of your society. I can't think of a more important part of society than the enforcement of its laws and the defense of its people. Can you?
I think that is a bare minimum threat. That's like saying the most important part of society is like access to food or water. I mean, while it's technically true, that's not what's separating out like the great societies from the middling ones. Well, I think that solving like enforcing crime is not a very complex problem. Now, solving the conditions for crime is complex, but just the enforcement mechanisms for, I guess, arresting people or holding people in prison is not the most pressing or important part of a country today.
Wait a second. The things which give nations the greatest amount of stability, especially as if they're a nation of laws and a nation of law and order, I would say that that's a pivotal, fundamental foundation for your nation to thrive. Like Somalia is not doing so hot, right? Places without law and order aren't doing so hot.
Okay, so let's think of like...
Let me finish, and then I'll kick it back over. Same thing with the military. One of the reasons we're one of the most powerful nations on planet Earth and have such security is because we have such a massive national defense system. And yes, I think enforcement is pivotal to all societies everywhere at all times, regardless of their technology level or not.
If you're comparing like what country is more successful, Germany, France, the UK, Norway, Sweden, the United States, Canada, at any point in this conversation, is the enforcement mechanism for cracking people on the street ever entering the conversation?
Well, it's assumed. So these are baseline assumptions. So just because we assume that this is already kind of baked into the pie, so therefore we're not talking about it, doesn't mean that it's not one of the most important fundamentals to that society.
That's what I mean. It's important, but it's fundamental and largely solved. That's not going to be, just like I said, for food and water. No one's going to say France is better than Germany because less people are starving to death. That's an assumed thing. That like things like distribution of food and water in most first world countries and a lot of third world countries has largely been figured out. So these aren't the things that we ought to be focusing on these days.
But I think that they are, because when those enforcement mechanisms begin to break down, like we saw with the BLM riots and things like this, society itself begins to shake apart at its core. So I do think that it is important that we do start to look at these things as these systems begin to break down. I mean, you were kind of on the forefront, for instance, with, I don't even know if I can say the name on YouTube, right? But with the whole thing that happened with the three guys and the dude with the AR, right? You were on the forefront of that. You
say Rittenhouse on YouTube?
I don't know if you can or you can't. I don't know what you can say on YouTube anymore.
You can say whatever you want on
Okay. So anyway, on the Rittenhouse thing, you were kind of at the forefront of that. You understand that in a nation of laws, when you have a breakdown of law and therefore enforcement, that defaults back to something that's more primitive, which then becomes males who are enforcing whatever their own law is. I mean, so I think that this is something that is pivotal, and it is happening in society, and that's another helpful case for why the patriarchy is good.